This is probably the most used rule of thumb in statistics. It's called the empirical rule, also known as the 68, 95, 99.7% rule. And what it basically states is this, is when you have a normal data set, normal is underlined, then about 68%, about 2/3 of your data should fall between the mean plus one standard deviation and the mean minus one standard deviation. I'll say that again. So roughly 68%, 2/3 of your data should fall right in this range of the mean. So it's the mean plus one standard deviation, mean minus one standard deviation. That's 68% of your data. Rule 2, the most important one, 95% of your data, that's 19 out of 20, should fall between the mean plus or minus 2 standard deviations. So if you take the mean and you add 2 standard deviations, these lines aren't lined up here, I'm afraid to say, but that would be right about here, and you took the mean and you subtracted 2 standard deviations, it'd be right about there. In other words, 95% of your data should fall between whatever that range is. And then the last one is practically all of your data, 99.7, should fall between the mean plus or minus 3 standard deviations. It's way out here. But remember, there's always extremes, either way to the left or way to the right, always. So with that in mind, let's attack these problems. So there's our distribution. It's normal. Bam. That's what that capital N means, that it's a normal distribution. The first number is the mean. The second number is the standard deviation. So we have proof that it's normal. We have the mean and standard deviation. So the first question is, between what two weights do 95% of all the ice cream bars weigh? Now there's more than one answer here. I was thinking about that mathematically, but what I should have said was, what do the middle 95% of the ice cream bars weigh? So 95%, that's this rule. 95% is the mean plus or minus 2 standard deviations. Let me flip over here to my little graphic that I made. Okay, here's the rule. So 95% is plus or minus 2 standard deviations from the mean. And there's our mean is 0.427, right? That's stated. And our standard deviations are 0.33. So going to the right, we're going to add 4.27 to 0.33. That's going to be the first standard deviation. We're going to add 4.27 times plus 0.33 and another 0.33. That's going to be our second one. And we're going to add 4.27 times 3 times 0.33. That's going to be our third one. And then going backwards, we're going to subtract 1 standard deviation, subtract 2 standard deviations, subtract 3 standard deviations. I'm going to go ahead and turn them into real numbers. Ta-da, there it is, right? So there's 1 z-score, 2, 3 z-scores, standardized scores. But these are real values now, okay? So we want the 95% range. It looks like it's going to be between 0.361, that's the mean, minus 2 standard deviations, all the way up to 4.393, which is the mean plus 2 standard deviations. See, that's how that works. Let's keep going. Next question. What percent of the ice creams weigh under 3.94, under 3.94, under 3.94? So we want this area under the curve. Okay, so 3.94 is the mean minus 1 standard deviation. So this is where it gets kind of tricky here. So the mean cuts the data in half, right? So 50% on this side of the bar, 50% on this side of the bar. So we know that this half is 50%, and we know that between the -1 standard deviation and the +1 standard deviation is 68%. So half of 68 is 34. So this little slice right in here is 34%, plus the 50% is 84% here, all the way from this line to the right. So 1 minus 84% is 16%. So that's your answer to that one. Let's look at the next one. The 2.5 of all ice creams will weigh under what weight? So we're looking for a little dinky one here. So 2.5% is 5%. So we're looking at the 95% rule, right? I'm sorry, it's this little chunk here and this little chunk here. So this little chunk is 2.5. That's a little 2.5. So we're looking at the 95% rule again. Okay, so it's going to be 3.61. In other words, 2.5% of the fudgies will weigh less than 3.61. Moving on. What percent of the ice cream weigh over 0.493? Over 4.93. So again, this 4.93 is the mean plus 2 standard deviations. That makes it the 95% rule. So 100% minus 95% is 5%. Divided by 2 is 2.5. So there's 2.5% past 4.93. There's 2.5% less than 3.61. Almost finished. What percent of the ice cream will not weigh between 5.26 and 3.28? So the key word is not. Ho-ho. So there's 3.28, 5.26. That is the 3 standard deviation rule. That's the 99.7. So all we do is take 100% and subtract 99.7, and we get 0.3%. And that is all she wrote. Said the goat. Hope these help. MGZ out.